The last drop was not the worst bar on Kepler Station, but it was close. The air inside was thick with smoke from a dozen different worlds. Strange smells mixed together in ways that would make most humans sick, but Hyunwoo had learned to ignore the smell months ago. He stood behind the wooden bar, wiping down glasses with a dirty rag. His movements were slow and steady. Nothing about him stood out. Gray hair touched his temples. His hands were rough and scarred from years of hard work. His clothes were simple and clean but old. To anyone watching, he looked like just another human who had nowhere else to go. The bar attracted the worst kinds of people in the galaxy. Smugglers sat in dark corners counting their money. Weapon dealers showed off their latest guns to anyone with credits to spend. Thieves bragged about their greatest heists. And then there were the slavers. Hyunwoo kept his eyes down as he worked. He listened to every conversation but never showed he was paying attention. The aliens who came to his bar saw him as harmless. They talked freely about illegal deals. They discussed stolen goods like they were talking about the weather. They never worried that the quiet human behind the bar might be listening. 3 Vorthak slavers sat at the corner table. They were large creatures with thick green skin and too many teeth. Their leader was called Grix. He was the loudest and meanest of the group. Grix liked to make fun of humans. He thought they were weak and stupid. "Look at this pathetic creature," Grix said in his rough voice. He pointed at Hyunwoo with one of his forearms. "Humans think they are so smart. But look where this one ended up." Serving drinks to his betters, the other Vorthak laughed. Their laughter sounded like rocks grinding together. Hyunwoo did not look up from his glass cleaning. He had heard this kind of talk many times before. "I bet he cannot even understand what we are saying," said another. Vorthak named Krell. "Humans are too simple to learn proper languages." Hyunwoo understood every word. He spoke 7 alien languages fluently, but he kept this knowledge to himself. It was better if they thought he was stupid. A new customer walked into the bar. She was a hegemony information broker named Zara. Her blue skin sparkled under the dim lights. She had 4 eyes that could see in different directions at once. Zara bought and sold secrets for a living. She knew things that could start wars or end them. "The usual," Zara said as she sat at the bar. Hyunwoo nodded and poured her drink. It was a purple liquid that would kill most humans. For hegemony people, it was like drinking water. He slid the glass across the bar without saying a word. Zara studied him with her 4 eyes. "You are very quiet, human. Most of your kind talk too much." Hyunwoo shrugged his shoulders. He had learned that silence was often the best answer. People said more when they thought you were not really listening. The door opened again. This time a Rillan weapons dealer named Keth walked in. He was tall and thin with skin like metal. His people were known for making the best weapons in the galaxy. They were also known for not caring who they sold weapons to. Keth sat near the Vorthak table. Soon he was showing them his latest products. Stun weapons that could drop a full-grown human in seconds. Neural disruptors that could control minds. Slave collars that would shock anyone who tried to run away. "These are perfect for your line of work," Keth said to Grix. "Very effective on human subjects." Grix picked up one of the stun weapons. "Humans break so easily. We barely need weapons for them. But these might be useful for the stronger species." Hyunwoo continued cleaning glasses. His movements never changed. But if someone had looked closely, they might have seen his knuckles turn white as he gripped the glass harder. The bar filled up as the night went on. More criminals arrived. They brought stories of their latest crimes. Pirates talked about ships they had attacked. Smugglers discussed illegal cargo runs. Slavers shared tips about the best hunting grounds. Hyunwoo served them all. He poured their drinks and took their money. He cleaned up their messes and listened to their stories. To them, he was invisible. Just part of the furniture. A tool to be used and ignored, but Hyunwoo was always watching, always listening, always remembering. He noticed which criminals worked together. He learned about their trade routes and safe houses. He discovered who their buyers were and where they kept their stolen goods. Every conversation was filed away in his memory for later use. The Vorthak slavers were regulars at the last drop. They came in 3 times a week to drink and brag. Grix loved to tell stories about his successful raids. He described how they attacked colony ships and trading vessels, how they separated families and sold them to different buyers across the galaxy. "The secret is to hit them fast," Grix explained to the other criminals. "Humans panic easily. Once you capture a few, the rest surrender quickly." Krell nodded his ugly head. "They care too much about each other. It makes them weak. Weak and profitable, Grix laughed. Human children bring the best prices. The buyers love how easy they are to train. Other customers joined the conversation. They shared their own experiences with human trafficking. They talked about humans like they were discussing livestock, numbers and prices and the best markets to sell them in. Hyunwoo kept working. He moved between tables collecting empty glasses. He restocked bottles behind the bar. He swept the floor and wiped down surfaces. He looked like any other tired worker just trying to get through another day. But something was building inside him. Something cold and patient and dangerous. The night grew later. Some customers left to attend to their business. Others stayed to drink more and tell more stories. The Vorthak slavers were among those who stayed. They had nowhere important to be and plenty of money to spend on alcohol. Grix was telling a story about a recent raid when he noticed Hyunwoo nearby. The human was collecting glasses from empty tables. Moving slowly and quietly like always. "You there, human?" Grix called out. "Bring us another round." Hyunwoo nodded and went back to the bar. He prepared their drinks with the same careful attention he gave to everything. When he brought the drinks to their table, Grix grabbed his wrist. "Tell me, human," Grix said with a mean smile. "Do you have family somewhere?" Hyunwoo looked at the slaver with calm eyes. "No," he said quietly. "No family." Grix laughed and let go of his wrist. "Good. Family makes you soft. Makes you do stupid things." Hyunwoo returned to his work behind the bar, but now his hands moved just a little bit faster. His breathing was just a little bit deeper, and his eyes, when no one was looking, were just a little bit harder. The night continued like so many others before it. Criminals talked and drank and planned their next crimes. They treated the human bartender like he was part of the scenery. They never imagined that he might be something more than he appeared. They never imagined that they might be wrong about humans being weak. They never imagined that some humans were just very good at hiding their strength, and they definitely never imagined that their quiet bartender might be the most dangerous person on the entire station, but they would learn soon enough. 3 weeks had passed since the last time Grix and his crew visited the last drop. Hyunwoo had begun to wonder if they had moved their operations somewhere else. He continued his routine of serving drinks and cleaning glasses. He listened to other criminals and gathered information, but the Vorthak slavers were the ones he waited for most. Then they returned. The door burst open with a loud crash. Grix walked in first, followed by his 2 companions. But this time they were not alone. 2 more Vorthak followed behind them. The group was excited about something. They talked loudly in their harsh language as they found their usual table. Hyunwoo prepared their drinks without being asked. He had memorized what each of them preferred. As he carried the tray to their table, he kept his face blank and his movements steady, but inside his heart was beating faster. "This calls for celebration," Grix announced to the bar. "We just completed our most profitable raid in years." Other customers turned to listen. Success stories were always popular in the last drop. Everyone wanted to know about jobs that paid well. Krell raised his drink in the air. To easy targets and high profits. The Vorthak clicked their glasses together. The sound was sharp and unpleasant. Hyunwoo returned to the bar but stayed within hearing distance. He pretended to organize bottles while he listened. "Tell us about this raid," said Zara from her seat at the bar. Information brokers were always interested in successful operations. Grix was happy to share the story. He loved being the center of attention. "We hit a human colony transport 3 days ago. The ship was called Harmony's Dream, full of families moving to a new settlement." Hyunwoo's hand stopped moving on the bottle he was holding. Harmony's Dream. He knew that name, but he forced himself to keep working while Grix continued his story. "The ship had weak defenses," Grix said with a laugh. "Humans always think they are safe in their little transport ships. They never expect real predators to find them." "How many did you take?" asked Keth the weapons dealer. 43 in total," Grix answered proudly. 15 adults and 28 children. The children will bring the best prices." The bottle in Hyunwoo's hand started to crack. He set it down quickly and picked up another one. His movements were still steady, but something had changed in his breathing. "The adults we sold to the mining operations," Krell added. "They will work until they die in the asteroid fields. But the children go to special buyers." "What kind of special buyers?" asked a pirate from another table. Grix smiled with all his sharp teeth. "Rich collectors who want exotic pets. Human children are very popular right now. They are smart enough to be entertaining but weak enough to control easily. More bottles started to crack in Hyun-woo's hands. He had to concentrate to keep from crushing them completely. The other criminals in the bar were laughing at Grix's story. They found it amusing. The best part, Grix continued, was how the humans begged. They offered us everything they had to spare their children. Money, information, other humans. They would have given us anything. Did you take their offers? Asked Zara. Of course not, Grix laughed. Their credits were worthless compared to what the children would bring. And we took everything anyway. Hyun-woo moved to the sink behind the bar. He needed to do something with his hands before he broke more bottles. The cold water felt good on his skin. He splashed some on his face when no one was looking. How did you separate the families? Asked the pirate. Krell answered this time. We stunned the adults first. Then we grabbed the children while they were unconscious. When the parents woke up, their young ones were already in different cargo holds. The crying was terrible, said one of the new Vorthak. Human children make such noise when they are scared. They stopped crying after we used the neural collars, Grix said. Amazing technology. The children became very quiet and obedient. The glass in Hyun-woo's hand did not just crack this time. It turned to powder in his grip. The other customers were too busy listening to Grix to notice. But Zara's four eyes were watching the human bartender carefully. What happened to the ship? Asked Keth. We destroyed it, Grix said simply. Made it look like a pirate attack. The authorities will think everyone died. No one will look for survivors. Very clean work, said the pirate approvingly. We always cover our tracks. Creel added. The buyers do not want attention from human military forces. Hyun-woo walked back to the bar area. His face was still calm, but the temperature in the room seemed to have dropped several degrees. Some customers pulled their coats tighter without knowing why. Where did you sell the children? Asked another criminal. Grix looked around the bar to make sure no security forces were listening. Most went to private collectors in the outer rim, but we kept 6 of the prettiest ones for a special auction. What kind of special auction? Asked Zara. The kind where buyers pay extra for untouched merchandise, Grix said with a nasty smile. Young humans bring incredible prices at those events. Something inside Hyun-woo went very still and very cold. He stopped all movement behind the bar. For the first time in months, he was completely motionless. When is this auction? Asked Keth. Next week on Raxus Prime, Grix answered. The buyers are very excited. Human children this young and this healthy are rare in the slave markets. The other criminals continued asking questions about the operation. They wanted to know about security, profits, and future opportunities. Grix was happy to share details. He enjoyed being seen as successful, but Hyun-woo was no longer listening to their words. He was thinking about 6 children who were waiting to be sold to the worst kind of buyers in the galaxy. Children who had been stolen from their families and would never see home again, unless someone stopped it. Zara finished her drink and walked to the bar for another one. As Hyun-woo poured her refill, she spoke quietly. You are very interested in their story, she said in a voice only he could hear. Hyun-woo looked at her with eyes that were suddenly much older and much harder than before. Just doing my job, he said. Your job is serving drinks, Zara replied. But you look like someone who used to have a different job. Hyun-woo said nothing. He slid her drink across the bar and turned away. But Zara had seen something in his eyes that made her think twice about the quiet human bartender. The Vorthak slavers continued celebrating their successful raid. They ordered more drinks and told more stories about their victims. They described how frightened the human families had been, how easily they had been captured, how profitable the whole operation had been. With each story, something inside Hyun-woo grew colder and sharper, like a blade being slowly drawn from its sheath. The other customers sensed the change in the air but could not identify what was different. Only Zara seemed to understand that something dangerous was awakening in the last drop, something that had been sleeping for a very long time, something that the slavers should have left alone. The bar had grown quiet except for the Vorthak slavers still celebrating at their table. Most other customers had left or were drinking silently in dark corners. The air felt heavy like the moment before a storm breaks. Hyun-woo stood behind the bar, completely still. His hands rested flat on the wooden surface. He was staring at nothing, but his breathing had changed. It was deeper now, controlled, like someone preparing for something important. Grix noticed the silence and decided he did not like it. He was drunk and feeling powerful. The successful raid had made him bold. "Hey, human," Grix called out loudly. "Bring us another round. And make it fast. We do not have all night." Hyunwoo did not move. He did not look up. He just stood there like a statue. "Did you hear me, human?" Grix said, his voice getting louder. "I said bring us drinks." Still no response. The other criminals in the bar started to pay attention. Something was happening, but they were not sure what. Grix stood up from his table. His chair scraped loudly against the floor. "I think our pet bartender has gone deaf," he announced to his friends. "Maybe we need to teach him some manners." The Vorthak laughed their grinding laugh. They enjoyed watching Grix intimidate the quiet human. It was good entertainment. But Hyunwoo slowly raised his head. His eyes met Grix's across the room, and for the first time since opening the bar, he spoke in a clear, steady voice. "Who took my children?" The words hung in the air like smoke. Simple words, quiet words, but they changed everything in the room. Grix blinked in confusion. "What did you say, human?" Hyunwoo stepped out from behind the bar. His movements were different now, not the shuffling walk of a tired bartender. These were the movements of someone who knew exactly what he was doing. "I asked you a question," Hyunwoo said, his voice still quiet but somehow filling the entire room. "Who took my children?" The other criminals stopped their conversations. Even Zara turned to watch with all four of her eyes. Something was very wrong, but no one could figure out what. "What children?" Grix asked. "You said you had no family." 6 months ago, Hyunwoo continued, stepping closer to the Vorthak table. "My son Jae-min and my daughter So-young were passengers on a colony transport. The ship was attacked by slavers. All passengers were reported dead." Krell shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "So what? Pirates attack ships all the time." "But they were not killed," Hyunwoo said. "They were taken, sold. And I have spent the last 6 months tracking the creatures responsible." The temperature in the room continued to drop. Several customers reached for their coats. Others started moving toward the door, sensing danger they could not see. "You are talking nonsense," Grix said, but his voice was not as confident as before. "What does this have to do with us?" Hyunwoo stopped walking. He was now only a few steps from the Vorthak table. When he spoke again, his voice was so quiet everyone had to strain to hear him. The transport ship was called Harmony's Dream. Grix's forearms went rigid. His drinking glass slipped from his fingers and shattered on the floor. The other Vorthak looked at their leader with growing fear. "That is impossible," Grix whispered. "Is it?" Hyunwoo asked. "You just spent the last hour bragging about attacking that exact ship. You described my children in detail. You told everyone about the special auction where they will be sold." The bar was completely silent now. Even the background sounds of the station seemed to have stopped. Everyone was staring at the human bartender who was no longer acting like a harmless servant. "You are lying," Krell said, but his voice shook. "You said you had no family." "I lied," Hyunwoo said simply. "People believe what they expect to see. You expected to see a broken human with no hope and no power, so that is what you saw." Zara slowly reached for her communication device, but her hand stopped when Hyunwoo looked at her. "The communications are jammed," he said without emotion. "They have been jammed since you arrived tonight." "That is impossible," Grix said. "We would have noticed. Would you?" Hyunwoo asked. "You were too busy drinking and bragging to pay attention to anything else." One of the new Vorthak tried to draw his weapon. The gun made it halfway out of its holster before it stopped working. The electronic system simply shut down. "Your weapons will not function," Hyunwoo explained. "The bar has been equipped with signal disruptors for months. I wanted to make sure my guests could not leave before we finished our conversation." Grix looked around the bar with new eyes. He noticed things he had missed before. The heavy blast shutters that had quietly sealed over the windows. The reinforced door that was now locked. The customers who were backing away from the confrontation. "You planned this," Grix said. "For 6 months," Hyunwoo confirmed. "Every drink I served. Every insult I ignored. Every story I listened to. All of it was leading to this moment." Krell tried to stand, but his legs would not support him. Fear was making him weak. "What do you want from us?" Hyunwoo's expression did not change. "I want my children back." "We do not have them," Grix said quickly. "They were sold. We do not know where they are now." "But you know who bought them," Hyunwoo said. "You know where the auction is being held. You know the names of the other buyers. "We will not tell you anything," Krell said, trying to sound brave. Hyunwoo nodded slowly. "I thought you might say that." He reached under the bar and pulled out a small device. When he pressed a button, screens appeared around the room showing security footage from the past 6 months. Every criminal who had visited the bar, every conversation that had been recorded, every crime that had been discussed. "I have been watching and listening to all of you," Hyunwoo said calmly. "I know your real names, your ship registrations, your home bases, and your bank account numbers. I know who you work with and who you work for." The criminals in the bar started to panic. They tried to reach the door, but it would not open. They tried to call for help, but their communications were blocked. They tried to draw weapons, but nothing worked. "More importantly," Hyunwoo continued, "I know exactly what crimes you have committed and where you committed them. Human space, hegemony territory, Rilland systems. You have broken laws in dozens of jurisdictions." Zara was backing toward the far wall. "What are you going to do with us?" "That depends," Hyunwoo said, "on how cooperative you are about helping me find my children." Grix was sweating now despite the cold air. "You are just one human. You cannot fight all of us, fight you?" Hyunwoo asked, and for the first time he smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Who said anything about fighting?" He pressed another button on his device. New images appeared on the screens. Military ships moving through space. Soldiers preparing for combat. Weapons being loaded and aimed. "You see," Hyunwoo explained, "I am not just a bartender. And I am not working alone." The criminal stared at the screens in growing horror. The images showed human military forces moving into position around the station. Boarding parties preparing to breach the hull. Security forces surrounding every possible escape route. "My real name is Captain Hyunwoo of the Human Colonial Defense Force," he said in a voice that had completely changed. Gone was the quiet bartender. In his place stood a military officer with years of combat experience. "And you have all been under investigation for crimes against human citizens." Grix tried to speak, but no words came out. "The bar was a cover operation," Hyunwoo continued. "For 6 months I have been gathering evidence against everyone who came through that door. You have all been very helpful in building cases against yourselves." The door to the bar finally opened, but instead of providing escape, it brought human soldiers in full battle armor. They moved with military precision, surrounding the criminals and cutting off any hope of escape. "Now then," Hyunwoo said as the soldiers took their positions, "let us discuss where you sold my children. And please remember that cooperation will be noted in your files when you stand trial." The quiet bartender was gone forever. In his place stood someone the criminals finally recognized as the apex predator he had always been. The hunt was just beginning. The human soldiers moved through the last drop like they had done this many times before. Their armor was black and marked with symbols that made several criminals gasp in fear. The symbols belonged to the Human Deep Strike Force, the most feared military unit in known space. Captain Hyunwoo watched his men work with professional satisfaction. Each soldier knew exactly what to do. They secured the room, disabled any hidden weapons, and separated the criminals into groups. No words were needed. This was a well-rehearsed operation. Grix stared at the human he had mocked for months. The change was complete. Gone was the hunched posture and downcast eyes. In their place stood a man who radiated authority and controlled violence. Even his clothes seemed different, though they were the same ones he had worn while serving drinks. "This is impossible," Grix whispered. "You are a bartender. You cleaned our glasses. You swept our floors." "I did whatever was necessary for the mission," Hyunwoo replied. His voice carried the tone of someone used to giving orders and having them obeyed. "Did you really think the Human Colonial Defense Force would ignore attacks on our civilian transports?" Krell was shaking now. "We covered our tracks. Made it look like pirates. No one was supposed to know." "You covered your tracks from local security forces," Hyunwoo said. "You did not cover them from us." He nodded to one of his soldiers. The man activated a holographic display that filled the center of the room. Images appeared showing the wreckage of Harmony's dream. But these were not the official investigation photos. These were detailed military analysis images that revealed things civilian investigators had missed. "Your weapons leave distinctive energy signatures," Hyunwoo explained. "Your ships have unique drive emissions. Your methods follow patterns we have been tracking for years." The hologram changed to show a star map with multiple attack sites marked in red, dozens of them spread across human space, all connected by the same energy signatures and attack patterns. You have been operating for over 2 years, Hyunwoo continued. 43 successful raids on human vessels. Over 800 people taken. Hundreds more killed to cover your tracks. Zara had been quietly studying the tactical display. You have been hunting them this entire time. Not just them, Hyunwoo said. The entire network. Slavers, buyers, transport companies, corrupt officials, everyone who profits from human suffering. He gestured to another soldier who activated a second holographic display. This one showed a complex web of connections linking criminals across multiple star systems. Names, faces, ship registrations, bank transfers. Everything needed to dismantle a criminal empire. 6 months of undercover work, Hyunwoo said. Every criminal who walked through that door was recorded. Every conversation was analyzed. Every contact was traced. The criminals in the bar looked around with growing despair. They realized they had been caught in a trap that was months in the making. Every time they had visited the last drop, they had been providing evidence against themselves. But you, Hyunwoo said, turning his attention back to Grix. You were always the primary target. The others were just bonuses. Grix tried to straighten up and look defiant. We are not the only slavers in the galaxy. Stopping us will not change anything. You are right, Hyunwoo agreed. That is why we are not just stopping you. The holographic display changed again. This time it showed human military forces moving throughout the galaxy. Strike teams boarding slaver ships, raids on hidden bases, arrests happening on dozens of worlds simultaneously. This is Operation Clean Sweep, Hyunwoo explained. Right now, every major slave trading operation that targets humans is being shut down. Ships are being captured, assets are being seized, personnel are being arrested. The scope of the operation was staggering. The display showed raids happening in real time across multiple star systems. Slaver strongholds that had operated for years were being reduced to burning wreckage in a matter of hours. How is this possible? Asked a pirate who had been quietly drinking in the corner. Humans have advantages you never considered, Hyunwoo said. We work well together. We plan carefully, and when someone threatens our families, we become very motivated. One of the soldiers approached and whispered something in Hyunwoo's ear. The captain nodded and turned back to the prisoners. The raids on the outer rim have been successful, he announced. 7 slaver bases destroyed. 42 enemy ships captured or destroyed. Over 300 victims recovered. Some of the criminals started to understand the true scope of what was happening. They were not just being arrested for their crimes. They were watching their entire way of life disappear. The financial networks are being shut down as well, Hyunwoo continued. Bank accounts frozen. Credit seized. The money you made from human suffering is now being used to help your victims. Krell finally found his voice again. What do you want from us? Information, Hyunwoo said simply. Names of buyers. Locations of slave markets. Details about ongoing auctions. And if we refuse? Grix asked. Hyunwoo shrugged. Then you will be tried for your crimes and spend the rest of your lives in human military prisons. Your choice. And if we cooperate? Asked Zara. Then you will be tried for your crimes and spend most of the rest of your lives in slightly better human military prisons. The information broker considered this. Not much of an incentive. The incentive, Hyunwoo said coldly, is that cooperation might help save the children who are still waiting to be sold, including my own. He walked closer to the Vorthak table. His movements were predatory now, like a hunter approaching wounded prey. You mentioned a special auction on Raxus Prime. 6 human children from Harmony's dream. When exactly is this auction? Grix looked at his companions for support, but they were all staring at the floor. Finally, he spoke. Tomorrow night. Location? Private estate in the Northern District. Belongs to a collector named Vex the Cruel. Security? Heavy. Vex is paranoid about competitors and law enforcement. Hyunwoo nodded to another soldier who began recording the information. Who else will be there? The major buyers from across the sector, Krell said, apparently deciding that cooperation was his best option. Collectors, entertainment providers, private armies looking for specialized personnel. How many children in total? 53 from various raids, Grix admitted. Different species, different ages. The human children are just part of the merchandise. Hyunwoo's jaw tightened, but his voice remained controlled. Described the layout of the estate. For the next hour, the Vorthak provided detailed information about the auction, the security measures, and the people involved. They drew maps, provided passwords, and revealed every detail they could remember. The alternative was facing human justice with no cooperation on their record. Other criminals in the bar were also being questioned by the soldiers. Each had information that could help with different aspects of the operation. Weapon shipments, transport routes, safe houses. Piece by piece, a complete picture emerged of the criminal network. This information will be verified, Hyunwoo warned when the interrogation was complete. If you have lied about anything, your cooperation will not be noted in your files. We told you everything, Grick said weakly. Good. Hyunwoo turned to his soldiers. Prepare them for transport to the holding facility. Make sure they understand that their safety depends on the accuracy of their information. As the prisoners were led away, Zara managed to speak to Hyunwoo one last time. Your children. Do you really think you can save them? Hyunwoo looked at her with eyes that held both hope and determination. I have spent 6 months preparing for this moment. I have the best soldiers in human space, and now I know exactly where my children are. The estate will be heavily defended, Zara warned. So were the other 47 locations we hit tonight, Hyunwoo replied, and they all fell within the first hour. As the last prisoners were removed from the last drop, Hyunwoo stood alone in the bar that had been his cover for so long. Tomorrow he would face his greatest challenge. Tomorrow he would learn if all his planning and sacrifice had been enough. Tomorrow he would get his children back or die trying. The quiet bartender was gone forever. In his place stood a father on a mission that would not end until his family was whole again. 24 hours after the arrests at the last drop, the galaxy was learning what happened when humans decided to end a problem permanently. Reports came in from across known space. Slaver operations that had existed for decades were simply gone, not defeated or scattered, completely destroyed. Captain Hyunwoo stood in the command center of the human battleship Retribution, watching status reports appear on screens around the room. Each update confirmed another successful strike. His months of undercover work had provided targets for the largest coordinated military operation in human history. Strike. Team 7 reports complete success at the Vorthen base, announced Lieutenant Commander Sung Min. 42 prisoners rescued, 17 slavers eliminated, base facilities destroyed. Strike Team 12 has secured the Helix Station operation, added Major Kyung-suk. Over 100 victims recovered. The financial records are being transmitted now. The scope of Operation Clean Sweep was beyond anything the criminal underworld had imagined possible. Human forces were hitting slaver operations simultaneously across dozens of star systems. Each strike was precise, overwhelming, and final. But Hyunwoo only cared about one target: the auction on Raxus Prime where his children were being held. Status report on the Raxus Prime mission, he ordered. Reconnaissance teams are in position, reported Major Kyung-suk. We have confirmed the location and identified all security measures. The auction is scheduled to begin in 6 hours. How many children? 53 confirmed. Multiple species. Ages ranging from 5 to 16 standard years. Hyunwoo felt his anger burn cold and steady in his chest. 53 children stolen from their families and brought to be sold like animals. What about the buyers? Over 200 expected guests, Sungmin answered. We have identified most of them from the records seized during other raids. Collectors, entertainment operators, private armies, and worse. Worse? Hyunwoo asked, though he was not sure he wanted to know. Some buyers specialize in particular types of exploitation, Kyung-suk said carefully, the kind that requires young victims who cannot resist or escape. The temperature in the command center seemed to drop. Every officer present had children of their own. They understood exactly what kind of evil they were dealing with. Rules of engagement? Asked Sungmin. Full combat authorization, Hyunwoo replied without hesitation. Anyone who participated in this auction is a valid target. Priority is the safety of the children, but I want every buyer and organizer eliminated. The other officers nodded. They had seen the intelligence reports. They knew what these people did to children. None of them had any sympathy for creatures who traded in young lives. What about the estate owner, Vex the Cruel? He dies last, Hyunwoo said simply. I want him to watch his entire operation burn before he joins his customers. A new report appeared on the main screen. The reconnaissance teams had uploaded detailed maps of the estate, including guard positions, security systems, and the location where the children were being held. The building layout matches the information provided by the prisoners. observed Kyung-suk. They seem to have told us the truth. Good for them, Hyun-woo said. It means they might live long enough to serve their prison sentences. He studied the tactical display showing Vex's estate. The building was large and heavily fortified. Multiple security layers protected the central auction area. Guard towers covered all approaches. Underground bunkers could shelter the organizers if the compound was attacked. Estimated resistance? He asked. 200 security personnel, Sungmin reported. Military-grade weapons and armor. Several automated defense systems. They are prepared for a significant assault. Are they prepared for us? No, sir, Sungmin smiled grimly. Nothing could prepare them for what we are bringing. The plan was complex but had been rehearsed many times. 3 strike teams would hit the compound simultaneously from different directions. Air support would eliminate the guard towers and disable communications. Electronic warfare specialists would shut down all defensive systems. But the most important part of the mission belonged to Hyun-woo himself. He would lead the team that went directly to the children's location. Every second would count once the attack began. The buyers would try to kill their merchandise rather than let it be rescued. Final equipment check, Hyun-woo ordered. I want every soldier ready for immediate deployment. The preparations took another hour. Weapons were tested and loaded. Armor systems were calibrated. Communication networks were synchronized. Medical teams prepared for treating traumatized children in multiple alien languages. Sir, Kyung-suk approached with a data pad. We just received an update from the interrogation teams. One of the prisoners revealed additional information about the auction. What kind of information? There are buyers attending who specialize in human children specifically. They have standing orders for young humans and pay premium prices. Hyun-woo took the data pad and read the details. The names and faces of beings who had built their wealth on the suffering of human families. Creatures who saw children as commodities to be bought and used. Add these names to the target list, he said, handing back the pad. I want every one of them identified and eliminated during the assault. Yes, sir. Another report came in from the reconnaissance teams. The auction guests are arriving now. Ground sensors show over 100 vehicles approaching the estate. Good, Hyun-woo said. Let them all gather in one place. It will make our job easier. The final hour before the assault passed quickly. Status reports continued to arrive from other strike teams across the galaxy. The slave trading network was collapsing everywhere human forces struck. Operations that had seemed untouchable were being reduced to smoking ruins. Strike Team 2 reports success at the Omega Trading Post, announced a communications officer. All slavers eliminated. 37 victims recovered. Strike Team 15 has neutralized the Crimson Fleet operation, added another officer. The entire slaver convoy has been captured. But the reports also revealed the true scope of the horror they were fighting. Hundreds of victims recovered from each location. Children from dozens of species held in conditions that would haunt the rescue teams forever. The slave trade had been vast and profitable because the demand was equally vast. Sir, Sungmin approached. The Raxus Prime strike teams are in final position. We can begin the assault on your command. Hyun-woo looked at the tactical display one more time. In a few minutes, he would learn if his months of planning and sacrifice had been enough. He would discover if his children were still alive and could be saved. All teams, this is command, he spoke into his communicator. Operation Child Shield is authorized. Begin the assault. On screens around the command center, the attack began. Streaks of light showed missiles hitting guard towers. Explosions bloomed across the estate grounds. Electronic jamming cut off all communications from the compound. First wave successful, reported the strike team leader. Outer defenses eliminated. Moving to second phase. Electronic warfare reports all defensive systems offline, added another voice. The compound is blind and deaf. Hyun-woo felt his heart pounding as he watched the attack unfold. Somewhere in that burning compound, his children were waiting for rescue. After 6 months of careful planning, the moment of truth had finally arrived. Strike Team Alpha has breached the main building, came the next report. Encountering heavy resistance in the auction hall. Strike Team Beta is moving to the holding areas, reported another team leader. We can hear children crying inside the building. The mission was just beginning. But already Hyun-woo could feel that something was different about this assault. The precision was perfect. The coordination was flawless. Every soldier knew that they were not just fighting criminals. They were fighting monsters who stole children from their families. Target. Acquired. came a voice from Strike Team Alpha. Vex, the Cruel is in the auction hall trying to organize a defense. Do not eliminate him yet, Hyunwoo ordered. I want him alive until all children are secured. Understood, Command. More reports flooded in as the assault continued. The buyers in the auction hall were trapped and being systematically eliminated. Many tried to surrender, but the human soldiers had seen the intelligence files. They knew exactly what these creatures did with the children they bought. Strike Team Beta has reached the holding area, reported team leader Captain Dalho. We have visual on multiple children. They appear to be alive but drugged. Are they injured? Hyunwoo asked, his voice tight with concern. Preliminary assessment shows malnutrition and signs of abuse but no immediate life-threatening injuries. Medical teams are standing by. How many children do you see? At least 40 in this section. Mixed species. Some appear to be human, but they are sedated and it is difficult to confirm identities. Hyunwoo closed his eyes for a moment. After 6 months of hunting, he was finally close to finding Jae-min and So-young. But he forced himself to focus on the tactical situation. All the children mattered, not just his own. Continue the search, he ordered. There should be another holding area for the premium merchandise. Moving to the lower levels now, Dalho reported. The assault continued with mechanical precision. Human soldiers moved through the compound like a force of nature. Every room was cleared. The medical bay of the battleship Retribution was quiet except for the soft beeping of monitoring equipment. Captain Hyunwoo sat in a chair between two beds watching his children sleep. Jae-min and So-young were finally safe, but the drugs in their systems would take time to wear off completely. Dr. Min-jung approached with her medical report. Their physical condition is better than we expected, she said quietly. Malnutrition and some bruising, but no serious injuries. The psychological trauma will take longer to heal. How long before they wake up? Another few hours. The slavers used powerful sedatives to keep them compliant for transport. When they wake up, they may be confused and frightened. Hyunwoo nodded. He had prepared himself for this moment, but seeing his children unconscious and pale made his heart ache. They looked smaller than he remembered. More fragile. 6 months of captivity had changed them in ways he was only beginning to understand. The other children are responding well to treatment, Dr. Min-jung continued. We have contacted the families of those we could identify. The ones without families will be placed with appropriate care services. What about the alien children? They are being prepared for return to their homeworlds. Most have families searching for them. The reunion process will take several weeks to coordinate. A communication officer entered the medical bay. Sir, we have received final reports from all strike teams. Operation Clean Sweep is officially complete. Give me the summary, Hyunwoo said, not taking his eyes off his sleeping children. Total operations destroyed, 48. Total victims recovered, 1,237. Total slavers eliminated, over 3,000. Financial damage to the criminal network, estimated at 4 trillion credits. The numbers were staggering, but they only told part of the story. Behind each statistic was a family that had been torn apart by greed and cruelty. Children who had been stolen from their parents. Adults who had been sold into forced labor. The scope of the slave trade had been vast and profitable, because the demand was equally vast. What about the buyers and clients? Most of the major buyers were eliminated during the simultaneous raids. The few who escaped are being hunted by local authorities using the evidence we provided. The financial networks they used have been completely dismantled. Hyunwoo felt a grim satisfaction. The creatures who profited from human suffering would find their entire way of life destroyed. Their money was gone. Their suppliers were dead. Their protection was broken. Those who survived would spend the rest of their lives looking over their shoulders. Sir, the communication officer continued, we have also received word from Kepler Station. The last drop has been converted into a memorial for victims of the slave trade. The galactic community is calling it a symbol of what happens when predators underestimate their prey. The irony was not lost on Hyunwoo. The bar where he had pretended to be a harmless servant had become a warning to criminals throughout the galaxy. No one would ever again assume that a quiet human was just a quiet human. Jae-min stirred in his bed. His eyes opened slowly, unfocused and confused. He looked around the medical bay without recognition, fear growing in his expression. Jae-min, Hyunwoo said gently, you are safe now. You are with me. His son turned toward the voice. Recognition dawned slowly in his eyes. Appa, he whispered. Yes, Hyunwoo said, taking his son's hand. I am here. I found you. Tears ran down Jaemin's face as he gripped his father's hand. I knew you would come, he said. So Young said you were dead, but I knew you would come for us. I will always come for you, Hyunwoo promised. Both of you. So Young woke a few minutes later. Her reaction was similar but more reserved. The months of captivity had made her cautious about trusting anyone, even her own father. But gradually, as Hyunwoo spoke to her about things only he would know, she began to believe it was really him. Are we going home? She asked. Soon, Hyunwoo said. First, we need to make sure you are both healthy. Then we will go to a safe place where no one can ever hurt you again. What about the other children? Jaemin asked. There were so many of us. They are all safe too, Hyunwoo assured him. Every child who was taken is being returned to their family or placed somewhere safe. Dr. Min Jung performed additional examinations while the family talked. The children's vital signs were improving rapidly now that they were awake and reunited with their father. The worst of the physical effects would heal quickly. The emotional healing would take much longer. We want to tell you what happened, So Young said suddenly. The things they did to us. Only if you want to, Hyunwoo said carefully. There is no rush. We have all the time in the world now. But the children did want to talk. The words poured out of them like poison being drained from a wound. They described their months in captivity. The fear and confusion. The way they were treated like animals. The other children who had not survived the experience. Hyunwoo listened to every word, his anger burning cold and steady. He was grateful that most of the people responsible were already dead. It saved him from having to hunt them down personally. The worst part, Jaemin said, was not knowing if anyone was looking for us. The slavers said our families thought we were dead. They said no one would ever come for us. I never stopped looking, Hyunwoo said. Every day for 6 months I searched for you. I would never have stopped until I found you. How did you find us? So Young asked. Hyunwoo told them about his months undercover at the last drop. How he had pretended to be a broken bartender while gathering intelligence on the slave trade. How he had planned and coordinated the operation that brought them home. The children listened with wide eyes, proud of their father but also shocked by the lengths he had gone to save them. You were a spy, Jaemin said with admiration. I was a father, Hyunwoo corrected. Everything else was just the job I had to do to get you back. Over the following days, reports continued to arrive about the aftermath of Operation Clean Sweep. The galactic criminal underworld was in chaos. Slave trading organizations that had operated for decades were simply gone. The financial networks that supported them had collapsed. Governments that had been corrupted by slave trade money were falling apart. But there were also positive reports. Families were being reunited across the galaxy. Children who had been given up for dead were returning home. The terror that had haunted civilian transportation was ending. Parents no longer feared that their children would be stolen by slavers. The galaxy will remember what happened here, reported Major Kyung-suk during one of her briefings. The speed and coordination of our response has shocked everyone. Criminal organizations are reconsidering any operations that target human civilians. Good, Hyunwoo said. Fear is the only language these creatures understand. There is something else, sir, Kyung-suk continued. The other species are asking for our help with their own slave trade problems. They want human military advisors to help them plan similar operations. What did Command say? They are considering it. The technology and tactics we used could be adapted to protect other species as well. Hyunwoo nodded. The slave trade was not just a human problem. Children from dozens of species had been recovered during the raids. If human methods could help protect them too, it was worth considering. A week later, Hyunwoo was finally cleared to take his children home. Their new home was on a secure colony world where military families could live safely. The location was classified and heavily protected. No slaver or criminal organization would ever threaten them again. As their transport ship approached the colony, Jaemin and So Young pressed their faces to the windows to see their new world. It was beautiful and peaceful with green forests and blue lakes. Nothing like the industrial nightmare of Kepler Station or the prison where they had been held. Is this really ours? So Young asked. This is home, Hyunwoo confirmed. A place where you can grow up safe and happy. The colony welcomed them with a celebration. Other military families understood what they had been through. Children who had never been in danger played with children who had survived the worst experiences imaginable. The community made sure everyone felt welcome and protected. That night, Hyunwoo tucked his children into their new beds in their new home. The room was bright and cheerful, nothing like the dark cells where they had been imprisoned. Security systems monitored every approach to the colony, but the children did not need to know about that. "Appa," Jamin said as his father turned off the lights, "will you always be able to find us if something bad happens again?" "Nothing bad will happen again," Hyunwoo promised. "But yes, I will always find you. No matter where you are or how long it takes." "How do you know?" So Young asked. Hyunwoo smiled in the darkness. "Because I am your father, and fathers never give up on their children." As he left their room, Hyunwoo reflected on the events of the past 6 months. Operation Clean Sweep had been successful beyond all expectations. The slave trade that targeted humans was effectively destroyed. Hundreds of families had been reunited. The galaxy had learned that humans were not helpless victims to be exploited. But for him, the most important success was much simpler. His children were home and safe. They would grow up free from fear. They would have the childhood that had been stolen from them. In the end, 2 years had passed since Operation Clean Sweep ended the organized slave trade. The colony world of Haven Prime had become home to over 3,000 families, whose lives had been shattered by slavers. Children who had been rescued played in parks that were once just empty fields. Parents who had lost hope were learning to smile again. Captain Hyunwoo walked through the central plaza of New Seoul, the main settlement on Haven Prime. His children were at school, living normal lives for the first time in years. Jamin was 12 now and captain of his soccer team. So Young was 14 and already talking about becoming a doctor to help other trauma survivors. But Hyunwoo was not enjoying retirement. Every morning brought new reports from across the galaxy. The destruction of the major slave trading networks had created a vacuum that smaller, more desperate groups were trying to fill. They were learning to be more careful, more hidden, more cruel. "Sir," Lieutenant Commander Sung-min approached with a data pad. "We have received another request for assistance." Hyunwoo took the pad and read the report. A mining colony in the Outer Rim had reported strange disappearances. Families were vanishing during the night shift changes. Local security forces found no evidence of what was happening to them. "How many missing?" Hyunwoo asked. 47 people in the last month, 15 children among them. The familiar cold anger stirred in Hyunwoo's chest. The slave trade was like a disease that kept finding new ways to spread. Cut off one head, and 2 smaller ones grew back in different places. "What does local law enforcement say?" "They think it might be pirates or raiders," Sung-min replied. "But the pattern is wrong for random attacks. Someone is specifically targeting families with children." Hyunwoo studied the data more carefully. The disappearances were happening during specific time windows when security patrols were changing shifts. The missing families were all from the same residential area. Someone with inside knowledge was helping the kidnappers. "Prepare a reconnaissance team," he decided. "Small and quiet. We need to know what we are dealing with before we take action." "Sir," Sung-min hesitated. "Command has asked me to remind you that you are officially retired from active duty. These investigations should be handled by regular forces." "Regular forces do not have experience with slave traders," Hyunwoo said firmly. "They do not understand how these people think or operate." The truth was more complicated. After Operation Clean Sweep, Hyunwoo had been offered promotion to admiral and command of the entire anti-trafficking division. He had turned it down to focus on his family, but he could not ignore the reports that came across his desk every day. Children were still being stolen. Families were still being destroyed. The enemy had learned to be more careful, but they had not learned to stop. "Besides," Hyunwoo continued, "I am not retired. I am just working from a different office." Haven Prime had become more than a safe colony for rescued families. It was the headquarters of a new kind of military unit. The Guardian Corps was made up entirely of soldiers whose families had been affected by slavers. They knew the enemy personally and fought with a dedication that regular troops could not match. "Sir," Major Kyung-suk joined the conversation. "The reconnaissance team is ready to deploy to the mining colony. Captain Dalho will lead the investigation." "Good," Hyunwoo nodded. "Tell him to be careful. If this is a new slaver operation, they will be expecting us now." The reputation of human anti-slaver forces had spread throughout the galaxy. Criminal organizations knew that attacking human civilians would bring swift and terrible retaliation. But some were still willing to take the risk for the enormous profits involved. "There is something else," Kyung-suk said. "We have received intelligence about a new player in the slave trade, someone calling themselves the Collector." "What do we know about them?" "Very little. They operate through intermediaries and never show themselves directly, but they seem to specialize in acquiring specific targets rather than random raids." "Specific how?" "Children with particular skills or backgrounds. The offspring of important officials, young people with rare genetic traits, the kind of merchandise that brings premium prices from very wealthy buyers." Hyun-woo felt his blood run cold. This sounded like someone who had learned from the mistakes of the previous slave trading networks. Instead of large, visible operations, they were running a boutique service for the wealthiest and most dangerous clients. "Any connection to our missing families on the mining colony?" "Possibly. 3 of the missing children were identified as having exceptional intelligence test scores. Another was the daughter of the colony administrator." "Then this is not random," Hyun-woo concluded. "Someone is building a catalog of high-value targets." He walked to the large window that looked out over the colony. In the distance, he could see the school where his own children were learning to be normal kids again. The thought that someone might be watching them, evaluating them as potential merchandise, made his hands clench into fists. "Double the security around the school," he ordered, "and run background checks on all new staff members from the past year." "Sir," Sungmin said carefully, "do you think they would target children here? Everyone knows this is a Guardian Corps base." "That might make our children even more valuable to certain buyers," Hyun-woo replied. "The offspring of the humans who destroyed the slave. Trade would be quite a prize for collectors who want revenge." The possibility had haunted him since they first moved to Haven Prime. By making himself a symbol of human resistance to slavery, he had potentially put his own family at risk again. But the alternative was to hide and let other families suffer. "I want a full review of our security protocols," he decided. "If the Collector is real and operating in this sector, we need to be ready." "What about the reconnaissance mission to the mining colony?" "Proceed as planned, but with additional backup. If Captain Dalho finds evidence of slaver activity, I want overwhelming force available immediately." As his staff left to carry out their orders, Hyun-woo remained at the window. The peaceful colony below represented everything he had fought to protect. Families living without fear, children playing in safety, the simple right to exist without being hunted by predators. But peace was fragile. It required constant vigilance and the willingness to fight for it again and again. His communicator buzzed with an incoming message. It was from the school. A routine update about his children's activities. Jaemin had scored 2 goals in soccer practice. So Young had been selected for advanced science classes. Normal, wonderful, boring updates about normal kids living normal lives. The message also included security footage from the school's perimeter cameras. Hyun-woo reviewed it out of habit, looking for anything unusual. Most of it was routine traffic and delivery vehicles. But one image caught his attention. A small surveillance drone had been hovering near the playground during lunch period. It was only visible for a few seconds before disappearing behind some trees. The school's automatic systems had flagged it as a possible maintenance drone and ignored it. But Hyun-woo recognized the design. It was not a maintenance drone. It was a reconnaissance device used by information brokers and criminal organizations to gather intelligence on potential targets. Someone had been watching his children. The cold anger that had driven him through 6 months undercover and 2 years of hunting slavers flared to life again. The Collector, whoever they were, had made a fatal mistake. They had threatened his family directly. "Sungmin," he called into his communicator. "Cancel the reconnaissance mission to the mining colony. We have a more immediate problem. Sir, someone has been conducting surveillance on our children. I want every surveillance expert we have reviewing the school security footage from the past month. I want to know who is watching us and how long they have been doing it." "Understood, sir. What about the missing families on the mining colony? Send Captain Dalho and his team, but tell them they are not just investigating disappearances anymore. They are hunting the advance team for a larger operation, one that may be planning to target Guardian Corps families." Hyun-woo walked back to his desk and opened his secure communication system. It was time to contact every Guardian Corps unit in the galaxy. If the Collector wanted to restart the slave trade by targeting the families of his soldiers, They were about to learn why that was a very bad idea. The quiet bartender from the last drop was gone forever. The patient hunter who had dismantled the slave trade was gone too. What remained was something new and more dangerous. A guardian who would protect his family and every other family under his care. The collector had no idea what kind of enemy they had just made. But they were about to find out.